Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Frontiers of Europe Digital Economy and the Future of Work Post-COVID in Central Eastern Europe webinar. So before we begin, I would just like to highlight a few courtesy points. Right. First off, a disclaimer that the information in this webinar is intended to provide general information and is not any form of legal or business advice. All efforts have been taken to ensure that the information provided in this webinar is accurate as of today. The organizers and speakers reserve all the rights to the materials provided. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on SBF's YouTube channel. We will also send you a link to that after the webinar. Some courtesy points, please keep your mics off, but the more important one is if you have any questions, any sort of comments, please feel free to interact in the chat section below. As for your questions, you can just put it in the Q&A box below. So if you hover your mouse below, you can see the Q&A and chat. So please feel free to use those functions. Thank you very much. Well, if that's the case, I think many of us are still rolling in, but I'll just take this chance to start the introductions proper. A very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join me over here. This webinar, Frontiers of Europe, Digital Economy and the Future of Work Post-COVID in Central Eastern Europe. It's quite a mouthful, but what we're trying to cover is for two aspects. One is for the area in terms of the market, and the other one is for the topic, right? The area that we're trying to cover today, trying to promote today, is for the Central and Eastern Europe. And for the topic that's very relevant to us, it's for digital economy and the future of work, how things have changed since COVID. And I'm very excited to welcome the panelists and speakers for today. But before that, maybe I'll just do a little introduction of Global Connect at SBF. So Global Connect at SBF, what we aim to do is in partnership with Enterprise Singapore, we've been set up to assist Singapore enterprises that are looking to internationalize and look for overseas partners, in this case for our CEE companies. As you can see, we have three pillars in Global Connect: learn, land, and localize. Learn is something like this. We're learning about the CEE market, but we also do other things such as for free trade agreements and etc. as a team taking care of that. Landing, once you have an idea, once you have intention on landing in the market, you can also contact us and then we can work with our contacts as well as our partners to make sure you get connected to the right people in the international market. And lastly, localize, get to know the people that are on the ground itself. So next part is for the program lineup. As you can see, we have a stellar range of speakers and panelists here today. How we'll be going through today is we'll have first Mr. Ray Kwan, the Director of SBF Global Division 3, to do an opening address. Afterwards, we'll cover the digital economy and future of work post-COVID landscape in Central Eastern Europe, covered by Ms. Magdalena Smolat, Vice President of Central Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, as well as the head of Polish Investment and Trade Association. Afterwards, we'll have Mr. Yo Zihan, who's going to be covering the same topic, but from a Singapore perspective, and he is the Director of Strategic Programs over here at SG Tech. Once we have the overview laid out by our two keynote speakers, we get to hear from four companies from across CEE region who will be sharing the best practices and case studies in the region. And first off will be by Mr. Marche of C#. After that will be Mr. Balas of Alice Technology, Mr. Jan of Pointy, and lastly, Mr. Gedinimas of Interactio. After that, then we'll have a chance, and this is the part for our participants, that you can interact with our panelists, not just the ones on the panel, but you can also ask questions and speakers can also provide answers in the Q&A box. But the panel that will be discussing on key challenges and prospects in the digital economy and future of work landscape would be by H1 System, Mr. Tamas, Nord Security, Ms. Ogne, as well as ETA Systems, Mr. Andre. So just and yes, without further ado, maybe I would like to invite Mr. Ray Kwan, Director of SBF Global Division 3, to deliver an opening address to introduce us to this webinar. Mr. Ray, please.
Thank you, Vincent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to our very first multi-country European webinar in 2022, exploring the fast-growing markets of Central and Eastern Europe. Today's webinar, Digital Economy and the Future of Post-Work COVID in Central and Eastern Europe, is an initiative by Global Connect at SPF, co-organized by the Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce and the Polish Investment and Trade Agency, to introduce one of the fastest growing regions in Europe in a very relevant topic of moving businesses and the very way we work in the digital realm. Well, the pandemic has accelerated digitization in the world and has transformed the way businesses operate and the very way we work. From prevalence of virtual meetings, increased online transactions, and international deals being closed digitally, the challenging times has been the much needed catalyst for innovation. Today, we have a chance to not only hear about exciting markets of Central and Eastern Europe, but also hear about how the leading companies have led the charge on the move towards digital economy. We will also have a chance to discuss on the challenges and opportunities in this space in the panel discussions. And webinar participants, you are encouraged to engage our panelists. We also have Zihan from SG Tech to share about the state of the digital economy from Singapore's perspective, and perhaps share insights on opportunities in this side of the globe. Digital economy has many players along the value chain that makes it possible, as much as it is about the way it affects us as consumers and businesses, such as remote work, digitized processes, and virtual interactions. It is also as much about the digital technologies underpinning infrastructure, such as AI, cloud infrastructure, and cybersecurity. Today, we have the chance to hear from the companies from across the value chain. Before we proceed to our main program, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all partners for this webinar. Today's webinar would not be possible without the strong support of our co-organizers, Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, and the Polish Investment and Trade Agency. Of course, to also mention our supporting partners, the Embassy of Hungary, Embassy of Romania, Embassy of Lithuania, Czech Invest, SG Tech, as well as Singapore FinTech Association. Distinguished speakers and panelists for leading the companies from Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Romania, and Lithuania. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I wish you a good webinar ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ray, for the very concise and very broad overview of this. Maybe next, if I could invite Ms. Magdalena Smolar to give an overview of the digital economy and future of work in the Central and Eastern Europe. Magdalena, please.
Thank you, Minkat. Good afternoon, Singapore. Good morning, Central Eastern Europe. I'm more than glad to welcome everyone on behalf of Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce in Singapore at today's webinar, Shedding Light on the Digital Economy. CE has definitely always been known for its great IT talent and is recognized as a back office for business services worldwide. Over years, we were observing a dynamic GDP growth in this region, and it had not been unnoticed, which resulted in capturing the attention also of investors from different other countries. The predictions say that coming years will just strengthen that trend. One may ask, but what makes this part of Europe an emerging market, and what are the key drivers, in fact, of this rising economy? And we are not talking only about the point that the post-COVID reality and in fact is entire last decade to look at. Among those driving factors, we should definitely mention successful reforms. I'm sorry, this my presentation is, one second. Just a second, checking with the team. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So among those driving factors, we should definitely mention not only the liberalization of economies in the transition from communism to capitalism, but also the entrepreneurial spirit, which is the main highlight, and as well inflow of foreign capital and direct investment. COVID has only, in fact, further reinforced and accelerated structural trends, which were already signaling themselves much longer before COVID, and now are just clearly more visible. One of the key drivers next to the trade and ability to diversify the logistic and supply chains is the rise of the digital economy with foundation in new technologies. According to the recent report by Digital Poland Foundation from 2021, it is estimated that the total capitalization of 100 largest technology companies coming from the CE has exceeded over 186 billion euros. But let's deep dive into more details. Since year 2000, the GDP of the CE region has increased 4 times. To have a better view for the situation, imagine that over the last 10 years, we only had one company, which was named Unicorn, and currently there are more than 36 with a valuation of over $1 billion. Among popular categories, we have software as a service, e-commerce, entertainment, which is thanks to the gaming development, and fintech. Central Eastern Europe's particular strength lies in enterprise software, process automation, developer and collaboration tools. As well, we should name here software development, cybersecurity, and marketing sales. When we take a closer look at the ranking of the top 100 companies from the Central Eastern Europe, we'll probably find an answer where the strengths of this sector lie. You also have to take into consideration that it's just one of many rankings available currently, and it's all about criteria which are very crucial here. In that particular case, among main criteria, there were either majority of the revenue has to come from the CE, which is usually over 50%, or company headquartered is in CE itself or owned by local investor. But as well, we can see from the chart that the classification was made based on the valuation. And to simplify this ranking, the author chose only 6 areas, which is also important. So that's cybersecurity, e-commerce, digital infrastructure, but without telcos, and fintech and media and entertainment, and as well mentioned before, software as a service. In 2021 has been an inflection year for the tech in CE with a significant crystallization of a value of the following IPOs. Just to name a few, well-known Allegro or Huge or Impulse as well, or UPAP. And large capital rises by Bolt, eobuwie, Rochlik, for example, and Vinted as well. What's worth adding here is that sectors that those companies represent, in fact, illustrate economic condition of the market and reflects trend in the region. So over 33% of those ranked companies of the largest companies here mentioned are valued over $1 billion. The most numerous group is made of companies that are involved in online trading. So that's usually the e-commerce part. In second place is the media and entertainment sector. Among others, due to the growth of the gaming sector in the CE region, where Poland actually is leading when it comes to gaming. Fintech accounts for around 13% of the entire market share. Can you please change the slide for me? Thank you. We can also see some examples of very impressive rounds which were closed in the CE, just to name a few. 4 of them, the biggest ones are just mentioned at this chart, and also reflects what's happening in the market when it comes to the mega trends of these 110 companies. Can you please check this slide? Yes, thank you. That was for the digital economy side, but acceleration of digitalization during COVID and shift to remote mode has also affected the way business work and further reinforced salaries democratization for highly qualified IT specialists. CE has definitely those capabilities, and due to significant concentration of talent pool, are high qualified developers and top know-how. Remote work models like offshoring and outsourcing were, of course, used much longer before COVID, so it's nothing new to us. And those companies which were using those models before and implementing those processes are definitely at the advantage side. Understandably, the team of tech people can be also built in-house, but it's not so cost effective and takes more time and requires hiring right talent and implement those processes from the scratch, while the companies should be focusing on their core activity. What we observe currently in that area, and maybe that's the potential trend as well, is more dynamic collaboration model. I found this very interesting new term called yourshoring, which is basically a way, an attempt to define the most optimal innovative business model, which is more flexible, more dynamic, and probably more custom and customized to the client's needs. Still task-oriented, what is very much important, but carefully selected specialists, which also fit the value and the organization culture, which is very much important. So nowadays, especially in light of talent shortage, it's not anymore a question if we need to consider such cooperation, but rather which model we should use to reach the best outcomes and to stay future-proof. And why not hire the best, which definitely can be easily found in the Central Eastern Europe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Magdalena. That was a very, very insightful, and also, I think you covered the market of CE pretty well, especially on the strength of enterprise software, the number of unicorns on the rise, right? As well as a very interesting point on yourshoring, just like an evolution of outsourcing and offshoring, right? That's made possible because of this digital economy. So thank you, Magdalena. All right, next, before we go on to the next speaker, Mr. Yeo Zi Han, participants, please take a look on your screen and you should have a poll question coming up, and just indicate if you'd like to be connected to CEEC. So while you're doing that, allow me to introduce to you our next speaker, which is Mr. Yeo Zi Han. So Mr. Yeo Zi Han, just a minute. Okay, now that we've heard about the landscape of the CE region, let's hear of how things are doing over here on our show. Our next speaker, Mr. Yeo Zi Han, is the Director of Strategic Programs at SG Tech and is a veteran of the tech space in Singapore. SG Tech is a leading trade association for Singapore's tech sector, representing over 1,000 members from MNCs, SMEs of all sizes to startups. It's the largest community of Singapore, where tech companies converge to advocate for change and drive what enables tech innovation and accelerates tech adoption. So maybe Zi Han will be able to better say that than me. So without further ado, Zi Han, please.
Thank you, Minted. Okay, let's see whether the slides work. Perfect. Okay, before I start, I just want to thank SPF. It's an honor to be here with our European colleagues. Some very interesting things I learned from Magdalena. So yourshoring is interesting to us as well. Something new and something we definitely need. So I'll share more about the challenges we're facing a little bit later. So I have a lot to get through. So forgive me if I'll just fly through everything. But if there's anything that you need a little more elaboration on, feel free to ping me and connect after this. Okay, maybe a little bit about SG Tech first. We are a trade association similar to SPF, but we represent the tech sector. And so with us, we have about 1,000 members, corporate members, and they represent the whole ecosystem more or less, from the big MNCs all the way down to startups, right? And I wouldn't consider myself a veteran of the industry at all, right? Minted is a bit too flattering, right? But what we do have is experience with dealing with a lot of these companies. And so I like to say my experience is secondhand. But at the same time, we gather these experiences from the industry. And that's how we serve as a voice for the community, often, advocating on their behalf to government or to other regulatory bodies. So that's our role, right? Essentially to clear barriers for the industry and to facilitate digital transformation and to catalyze it. So a brief, overview of, who we represent. These are the industry leaders, captains of industry across the board. Okay, and this our org structure, just to give you a quick sense of the things that we do. Many chapters that represent different communities, right? But we also have steering committees. If you look just below, the second row there, right? Looking at digital and data, basically transformation, as well as the issue of trust, sustainability, and of course tech talent. These are core horizontal issues that we, specifically focus on. Okay, our membership breakdown, I won't elaborate too much about this. And finally, just some examples of companies that we represent. Okay, let me jump straight into the landscape, right? And this is pulled mostly from SG Tech's annual survey. I hope there's something that, we will be interesting to you this afternoon. Okay, first with the business outlook, right? It hasn't been as bad for the tech sector as many would have expected, right? Financial performance, 40% said below expectation, right? But then, there's a good chunk within that also, right? They actually performed better than expected, even with COVID. And we found that in the second year of COVID, sentiments actually improved, right? And this was looking forward into the third year, financial performance, the next 12 months, right? The period that we are in right now, sentiments were actually pretty good. You see very little rate, right? And so they were looking forward to higher growth. But that said, the results are a little bit dated by now. We are looking forward to our next run already. And with the recent developments, we do expect sentiments to dip a little, right? Because of what's happened over the past few months. And these are the core areas that companies have been investing in. So across the board, SMEs and large enterprises, LE stands for large enterprises. We're looking at cloud, data, AI, machine learning, slightly different order, but these are still the three core tech areas that our companies are looking at. And in terms of domain areas, right, we are looking at platform as a service, product development for SMEs. But when it comes to large enterprises, we realize that they actually put a lot more investment into the digital workplace and COVID-19 specific tech. And I think when we talk about future of work a little bit later, just highlighting the key trends, some of this will come out a little bit more clearly as to the kind of solutions that companies will be looking forward to as well. Okay, some of again, these are the key technologies. What's interesting that I want to highlight here is that if you look at the right side, we are going to see an increase, or we are starting to see an increase in what we call second tier technologies that are emerging, right? So these are not the top in terms of current investments, right? But we see them inching up, right, over the past few years. Things like RPA for SMEs, the large enterprises are already doing it to death, right? But the smaller companies are catching up, and these represent opportunities that we can be involved in as well. Edge computing, data analytics, of course, the same, right? 5G and sustainable tech. These are not going away. In fact, cybersecurity will constantly, grow in importance. And the other issue which is slightly broader, the idea of trust and trust tech. Okay, some challenges. Number one is always manpower. So as Magdalena shared, right, your shoring might be a very interesting thing that would augment what we require in Singapore. So manpower has been the number one challenge by far, right, over the past at least 3 to 5 years, right? So, but other things are emerging, right? The issue of cyber risk, regulations, right? These are emerging as important, not just risk, but people are seeing it as business differentiators now, right? The idea of trust, especially. Okay, overall, tech sector still continues to see a strong demand, right? COVID has actually accelerated, the demand for some of these solutions. So that's why I started with the business outlook. The impact of COVID has not been even, right? In some cases, COVID has actually been a boon for tech companies. And if we, I assume that many of us are in the tech community, right? We can take advantage of these opportunities that have arisen. Okay, and this from the customer standpoint. So we got our respondents to also talk about what their customers need and what the barriers to them, right, in terms of buying technology. So cost is still a big deal, right? And you can see legacy systems that need to be overhauled. Adoption of grants and subsidies. Some companies can't take that on, right? And the risk, right, in terms of making those digital transformation transitions. And what's not written here is also, or it is, but I just want to highlight as well is the talent element, right, of digital transformation or buying solutions. That's often underestimated because at the end of the day, it's people that use these solutions, right? And that's not properly accounted for. Whatever the best solutions will still fall through the cracks. So that's something I think we all need to account for. And the idea of tech is actually moving beyond the IT sector. People who adopt solutions, the customer side of things, right, also need these same tech talents. Okay, right now moving on to the future of work in Singapore. I just, short of time, but I just very briefly want to touch on 3 big trends, right, that we are seeing. So the first is no surprise to anybody, right? We're talking about the growing importance of flexible work arrangements, and same thing going back to your shoring, right? This remote work, right? So these concepts will only grow in increasing importance. But then on the left, we talk about the work from anywhere arrangements, right? Fully remote, no holds barred, right? Anything goes. Companies like Spotify have popularized these approaches, and more are jumping on the bandwagon. But I think by and large, for most companies in Singapore, I think the answer is somewhere in between, right? We will not be a full remote workforce, neither will we be a full return to office. And that's where flexibility and a hybrid sort of arrangement will probably be the norm for most companies. And that's going to require tech solutions to help manage that complexity. And if we no longer have a one-size-fits-all approach to HR management or the return to work, right? That's something that tech solution providers, there's some gaps that tech solution providers can fill, right? So it's just something to take note of as we try to navigate these new approaches to work. The second is diversity and inclusivity or inclusion, right? This is something that Singapore admittedly hasn't been the best in, right? But it's something that we cannot avoid. You see on the left, only 7 in 10 employers 7 in 10 employees yet to have proper policies in place, right? In some countries like the US, and I'm sure in Europe as well, this is a given already, right? That you have to have these policies in place, right? By mandate. Otherwise, you're actually the exception, right? Singapore has some catching up to do. I think we're doing relatively well on the ground, right? Don't quote me, right? But in terms of officializing, some of this, or tangibilizing some of these things, right, into policies or codifying them, right, we still have some way to go. And I think the 4G, generation of leaders is recognizing that, probably the future PM, Minister Lawrence Wong, talked about it. We don't use the same language. I think when he talks about inclusivity, he talks about across the board social inclusivity as well, right, not just gender, etc. But I think that's the direction that is headed. So the solutions that can help to manage this or make the management of these processes a little easier will be very helpful for companies going forward, and that will probably feed into ESG reporting and the whole lot. Finally, we have mental wellness, right? There's a whole talk about mental well-being. The article on the left is from Deloitte. It's from 2020 actually, an old article, right? But we are seeing that actually this is getting more and more important, right? That if HR management systems or staff welfare, right, we are talking about well-being and wellness now that's integrated into the company's practices. So I think we are past the phase where fancy pantries are good enough, right? There was a whole period of that being a way to attract staff, right? Nice offices, fancy pantries, good staff benefits, right? But we need to go deeper, right? And that's how we're going to retain people, and it's going to become more and more important because we're talking about concept of COVID burnout, right? Great resignation in the US, which is now trickling down into the Singapore culture. We're not there yet, not exactly a great resignation, but we can expect it to come, right? And therefore, the technologies that can help support employer well-being in an integrated manner will be increasingly important, right? So these are the kind of the 3 trends that we see over the next around 3 years, right? When it comes to the future of work in Singapore post-COVID. Okay, I think I'll just leave it at that. I probably overshot my time, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Zahan. I think you touched on quite a number of very valid points. First off, it's certain things that we sort of knew, how tech has been accelerated and there's more opportunities, but seeing the data that you provided really solidified that, right, for us. Not a few things few key challenges being manpower, and also the people element of tech, as well as permanence of hybrid work as a norm. Those are very, very key things that we need to look out for. And that's probably where the opportunities are as well. Pops, you also touched on the mental wellness aspect. I think participants, you can also see a poll right now if you would like to be connected as hashtag, just do feel free to do so. And yeah, thank you for that. So now we've had a broad perspective, both from the CE side, as well as from Singapore side. But let's hear from companies in Central Eastern Europe that are actually driving this growth, right? And just hear what are some of the best practices that they've seen, that they've actually implemented, has had some successes. So who we have here today, right? We have Maciej from C#, Jan from Pointy, and Gediminas from Interactive, who are doing very, very interesting work with the companies that they're leading. Instead of me doing the introduction, I think it would be a lot better if they do it themselves. So maybe first we can have Maciej to share on C# and what you do. I think this will touch very well on the manpower aspect that we've been talking about. Maciej, please.
Hey, sorry. Once you move access to the host, I actually didn't have the ability to turn on my camera. I'm there. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So, pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the organizers for actually letting us share our thoughts on this. Right. So my name is Maciej Rohleder, and I'm
you
co-founder
have control too, by the way. Yes.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Can you see it now? Yeah. Perfect. So my name is Maciej Rohleder, and I'm a co-founder of C#, which is headquartered in Poland. And I'm also a managing director of our Singapore branch here locally. So I'm actually here in Singapore. And C# is a software house with IT consultancy and product design capabilities as well. And we actually grew on fintech initially, right? We our partner, we actually gone through a path from startup to becoming a unicorn. The partner is from Ireland, actually, so not necessarily CEE, but we have a lot more companies that we've ever worked with, right? So right now we're a lot more broad than just in fintech, and we're working with visionary startups, scale-ups, and enterprises. And we have clients globally, and all but one is remote, right? So all our clients, except for one, is actually a remote client, right? So this is really, I wanted to give you that background because that actually kind of explains why I'm here and why I want to talk to you about how to make the remote work, I guess. So we're in a very unique position, I think, because as a lucky few, we actually started experimenting and working remotely back in 2014 when we were incorporated. And so really when companies needed to transition into the remote work due to COVID and pandemic, we had the advantage to already be there, right? And what is the journey to actually be there, right? It requires to solve key initial challenges, really, that everyone will have to face. And some of them really are like, you have to remember it's a mindset change. You will have lower visibility of the progress of the work that is happening within the organization. You will have lower employee engagement initially, and the employees themselves will have difficulty to integrate. And finally, like the tooling and basically secure and reliable infrastructure in order to support asynchronous and remote work. So what is the outlook for the future? Like remote work is here and it stays, right? It will be here for good. Like it doesn't go anywhere. And we already see as actually, as Ihan was mentioning before, that it's not just almost like a benefit, it's an expectation from employees and it's expectations from everyone around the world basically right now. So like we need to also remember that the impromptu and under-strategized and autonomous remote work is actually quite hard if you don't know where to start, right? So during the years, we've explored many models of remote global collaboration, and we actually wanted to share a couple of insights from it. So our role as consultants is also to simplify the complex, and really that's the same way we try to approach, trying to strategize of our remote working model. It has to be simple, really, right? So we always start with a discovery boost, and that works both for product design work that we're doing, or even if it's just standard remote work, flexible working or outsourcing, we always start with a discovery boost because that's basically where we align on objectives, and we really want to understand and make sure that what you're asking for, we understand, and we can actually screen the right candidates for the job as well, right? So the flexible remote working model is let's say the core of our offering and what we really do the most, which is basically ability to in this custom way, scale flexibly your team. And we also heard from Magdalena today this term yourshore, and I think it's a really nice way to kind of summarize it, because you're getting the best out of outsource and offshore. So from offshore, you're actually getting almost a sense that those employees that you're hiring remotely are part of your organization. But from the outsource side of things, you're actually getting the value orientation and the focus you're needing to have. Yeah. The hybrid continuity model, though, is when an organization is actually not yet ready to fully embrace the flexible remote model, and we provide local resources, and that kind of bridge the gap of the organization and connecting with the remote people, right? So we found out that the best ratio is that to have like 1 to 5 proportion, right? So for every one employee locally here that actually works on packaging the work and communicating with the remote team, we're going to have 5 people working remotely. So basically, it's a temporary solution to make sure that your organization, if it's not ready yet in terms of infrastructure or internal processes, this can actually get you started. Yeah. And all our clients currently globally benefit from all of those models. And we found out actually that they can solve even for the most complex and demanding projects. So the silver lining here is that all of those models can be applied to other industries. As Zihan mentioned earlier, right? It's the same solution that we use for tech. They actually can find a place for other industries as well. And the only thing we need to remember is to execute them with discipline. Yeah? So how to be successful in this, really, right? Because I mentioned it's quite difficult, yeah, and how to actually get this going, really, right? And I know it's, the people working in enterprises and corporations looking at people, process, and organizations, they're probably quite disappointed right now, but it is really about that, right? So you need to make sure that there's trust within the organization, that the people that work remotely with you are actually part of your organization, right? That's your shoring, really, in a sense of words. And also you need to have the trust in the partner that you're working with. So it's not just the people, individuals, it's an entire organization and the processes that are built in to support this structure, right? And you need to be very clear when setting the standards and expectations, especially when we're talking about handoff points when it comes to work, the delivery of work, right? Because that's the only way to unlock the benefits of asynchronous work. And I'm going to talk about this a bit later, yeah? So ultimately, we're driving efficiency. We're actually have less waste. We deliver more efficiently. We can add flexibility and actually the oversight of work that is not rooted in the individuals only, but it's actually rooted in the process itself. Yeah? So ultimately, you're actually ending up with a better and more mature organization. And I think Zihan mentioned also that there is a big space for technology to help out with this, and I absolutely agree with this. But we have to also remember that the technology will not replace the culture of the organization and the fit, right? So the tools are only as useful as the people who are using them. Yeah? So although it might be actually a moot point right now to talk about benefits of remote work, because it's as I mentioned, it's here already. I think it's also important to actually have a quick look maybe at some of them that I've picked, right? So first of all, right, you're actually, by unlocking the asynchronous work, you're unlocking the potential to execute more work at the same time in parallel, right? So it actually matures your organization and increases your effectiveness. You actually have the access to the best talent pool and not just local, right? So again, if everyone does the same, why not get the best people in? Like the democratization of services globally, especially in technology, is there, right? So why not have the access to the best that you can have? So another one is that creativity actually thrives in flexible working environments, and being creative on a schedule is a myth. It just doesn't work, really, right? So if you're expecting to be creative, you need to be flexible as well. Huh? And I think the biggest one, at least the ones that from the ones that I listed here, I think it's the being able to promote and driving towards the outcomes rather than the outputs, right? So in a truly remote work, there is very little waste, and that makes it extremely sustainable model, right? Because you're actually getting the outcomes, you're not just getting the time. Yeah. And finally, so there's a lot more benefits, obviously, and as well as gotchas that we have to go through when we're conceiving the model that we did, and it's quite impossible to convey all in 8 minutes. But however, if you're interested in depth, going into depth and have a conversation, or just exchange ideas, I'm more than happy to have a chat. So drop me a mail or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to help. And again, I'll gladly send you an executive summary brochure that I prepared as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marche. And thank you for your presentation. I think one point I really touched on was that remote work, but you still have to make the team feel like a part of the organization. And since everybody is in different places, that's going to take more effort and also a different kind of effort, like you said. So maybe next we'll give the control over to Jan to give a presentation on Pointy. Jan, please. Oh, or Ivo, are you going to be the one presenting?
Oh.
Or...
Hello.
Hi. Guess it'll be Ivo then. Hi.
Oh, well, this is kind of strange. Yeah.
Are you feeling all right?
Yeah. Don't worry. So,
Thank you.
Vice President Gartner Research said process automation has shifted from an option to a condition of survival. And we at Pointy, we are making the intelligent automation and process automation maintenance simple. So we are helping with that. Oh.
You can use your arrow keys to go backwards as well.
No, that's fine. So, wow, okay.
So it's just a slight lag, so you can just
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it doesn't matter, guys. So to put it very simply, we are helping with the intelligent automation maintenance. We are very well, like we started with it's going. Sorry, the slides are not the internet one, so very sorry. I will just skip to the back or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So to put it very simply, what we are doing in Pointy, we have started with the problematic in process automation, and what we've learned that companies, the big ones, starting with the one process, automating more and more, and they are super successful with that. But after a while, it's pretty hard to maintain all those robots inside the organization. And what we do for them, we are making the maintenance simple. So there are like huge costs around the maintenance of the automation robots, and we can like save about 60% of the cost on the maintenance with our product. Lately, we've been very successful in Europe in huge organizations. One of the biggest financial institution in Europe, also spreading right now to US, and we are using our secret sauce. We are using our recurrent neural network models in order to find the problems in the data. And with that, we are able to really help the companies to reduce the manual work around the automation, and people can really focus on the automation and outcomes itself, not like tedious work around it. Yeah. So thank you very much. That's Pointy, and I will be glad to dig into the deeper details. Sorry about the presentation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan. Sorry, just now the screen was very small. I couldn't really see your face. I was like, wait, is that Ivo? Yeah, and then your name was Ivo. So yeah,
okay.
All good. Thank you so much for that. I think, the process automation in large businesses, right? That's where it started to take off. And now, as Zhihan has mentioned, in Singapore, these are the small companies are also starting to take off. And I think the ones that are driving a change is like companies like Pointy. right? So maybe next up, we can have Gediminas to introduce Interactio to us. We'll be giving you the control in just a bit. Here we go, and you should have control. Go for it. Take it away.
Hi.
Hi.
Laba diena, mano vardas yra Gediminas ir šiandien aš norėčiau Jums pristatyti Interactio kompaniją ir mūsų sprendimą, kuris įgalina visus Jūsų susitikimus atlikti tą kalbą, kurią nori Jūsų klientai arba Jūsų darbuotojai. And unless, guys, you speak fluent Lithuanian, none of that made sense for you. And this is one of the trends, actually, which we see in the international market and in the companies which are growing internationally, going abroad, going from Singapore to Central Eastern Europe, that multiculturalism and internationalization raises a new challenge for the companies, being efficient in communication. Being efficient in communication to your employees inside of the company or to even your clients around the world. So my name is Gediminas, and today I would like to introduce you our solution from Interactio, which actually was growing quite rapidly during the COVID pandemics, the hit of COVID pandemics, and supported a lot of corporates as well as institutions in going to a full remote work stage. So let me begin with. Yes, I'm waiting for the slides to react.
You can try using the arrow keys as well. There we go.
There we go. Perfect. So first of all, what is a remote simultaneous interpretation and the solution that we provide? So basically, it is a simple solution that connects three parties: the presenter on one side, the listener, participant on the other side, and we put the interpreter in the middle. And basically, the interpreter enables presenter and the listener use their own preferred languages, anytime, anywhere, in any setup. How we operate is that we provide, our solution enables to use this platform in all different settings. The old school on-site meetings happening in the companies or happening in the conferences, the full online meetings, which we all got used to in last few years, everybody meeting and joining from their homes, or the new tendency, which is growing quite rapidly right now, the hybrid meetings, where some of the participants are joining live, the others are joining online, and the same with the speakers, and the same with the interpreters. So we provide a full flexibility, and we can host any sort of setting for any sort of meetings or events. What we can see from our clients' perspective, there are different use cases where this is really beneficial, starting from the internal meetings, which has a very high stakes in decision making, like board meetings, which has a board members from around the world, going to global town halls for the companies, which is joining live in some specific region, and then all the other regions are joining online, and even going to some actual client presentations of new features, of new products, or just introduction of your company and your services to different regions. Anywhere where you have to connect people from around the world and who speaks in a different languages. So the way we do that is we have a very full video solution, online video solution, and we have an audio application. So the video solution is fully integratable. It can be used as a separate solution, or it's also fully integratable with all the major online video solutions. And the audio application is usually used for the on-site events, where, as you most probably know, most of the conferences, when you come in and you want to use some specific language translation or interpretation, you have to take some hardware device and use some standard headsets to use a specific line of language. Whereas with our solution, none of that hardware is needed. which saves significant costs for the organizers, and you can only use your own phone with the application and your set of headset, which is most probably much more comfortable than the others. So we are Interactio. We are the company which is operating since 2014. Our main goal is to provide possibility for companies and from people to communicate in their preferred language. We are one of the best rated solutions in the online, and having some significant achievements such as 120,000 attendees connected simultaneously on one single event. And while working with the events and internal company meetings, we know that two things are very important: is that the meeting would happen in time and in good quality. And the second thing is that we know that companies have sensitive data in the meetings. So the security is very important. So reliability and security are the two priorities which are in our company. And that's why we were one of the first in the world to gain the ISO standard for the RSI solution. And I guess the best proof is the client base that we have, which are actually using and been using with us our service through the COVID pandemics and continues to do so. Some of them you can see on the slide: Google, Microsoft, YouTube from the corporate side, and a bunch of European institutions such as European Parliament or European Commission from the institutional side. And just a small showcase of the European Commission, who've been planning to go online with their translation, with their online meetings for a few years. And then the pandemic hit, and the plan of transfer from 2 years plan, it was squeezed in 2 weeks plan. So we've managed to provide them with a solution, and we are working with the institution ever since the 2020 April, and we are providing over 100 meetings with 10,000 participants to the institution every month, providing them with our platform for their internal meetings, panels, conferences, and so on. So this is Interactio. As I already mentioned, we provide a multilingual solutions for your internal or external meetings. And we can see that in this post-COVID world, the complexity of connection is rising, and we are very happy to get in touch with you and to consult of how to best improve your communication across the globe. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gediminas. You know, I just thought of something that while you were presenting, you know, with digitalization, we have overcome the barrier of distance. But I think with solutions just such as yours, we can also overcome another barrier, and that is of language. And with that, you know, we can make the world a lot more connected and, you know, really make this digitalization in the future that we want it to be. So next, we're going to have the poll for all our speakers that have just presented. So participants, please feel free to vote on this poll. And also, by the way, in the beginning, like when you started speaking, I was like, wait, is something going on? I got scared for a moment. There we go. So please take a look at the poll. And while you're doing that, allow me to bring on the next part of our presentation. Should go to the panels. And right now we have distinguished panelists right here with us today. First is Tamas from H1 System, Hungary, Miss Ugne from Nord Security from Lithuania, as well as Andre. Hi again, Andre. From ETA System of Romania. So you know what? Again, instead of me doing the introduction for you, maybe it'll be a little bit better if you do the introduction for yourself. Maybe we can start with Tamas. Would you like to start?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamás Balog. I am the Managing Director for H1 System Singapore, which company is originally from Hungary, Europe, and also the lead consultant for data centers. As a company, we provide data center engineering services, starting from concept making, design, and also support of construction of data centers. In case of data centers, we are speaking of the physical facility itself. So what we are doing is actually to build up the fundamentals, the very basic, the physical part of the digital economy. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Thomas. I think you're representing the backbone that is allowing us to, for digital economy and remote working to take place. Maybe Ukne, would you like to go next?
Yep, sure. Hi, everyone. Very nice to be here. So I'm Ogna, and I represent Nord Security. So Nord Security is originally a Lithuanian company. It started back in 2012. But right now we have people working from 20 countries. We have over 1,500 workers just in Nord Security, and we also have around 15 million users. So Nord Security provides privacy and security solutions. So it's a very much cybersecurity company, and COVID was a very busy time for us as we work with virtual private networks. So we provide password managers, cloud security products, and it has been a big boost during COVID. It's not nice to say, but that was the case, both for the business to consumer, both business to business solutions. And it's very great to be here.
Thank you, Agni. Thank you so much for that. Oh, okay. Next, we have Andre from Etta Systems. Maybe would you like to go with the introduction for yourself? Hi again.
Sure. Hi, thank you very much for the invitation. It's really nice to be to join a conversation with you again. So I represent Etta Systems. Etta Systems is a boutique software development studio. We focus on three areas: healthcare, education, and finance. And we provide services like user research, user interface design, software engineering, data science, data analytics. We focus on two types of customers. One of them is big international organizations like the World Bank or UNICEF, and the other one is funded startups in these three areas that I mentioned before.
I see.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think our panel has quite a good mix of like different parts of the value chain, right? First, Tamas from infrastructure aspect, right? And then Ogne can touch both on B2B as well as a little bit on the consumer side. And Andre, you can really drill down a little bit more on business needs and organizational needs. So I think that's really good. So before we begin, like the discussion, I just want to allow participants to also be a part of this. We don't want this to be just a question answer session. We want to be a session where
that would be perfect.
Interact, exactly, right? Interact, and if you have any questions, if you have any comments, just go for it, right? So before we do that, maybe I'll just start off, the ball rolling with just a very general question, right? So, like as you know, there are many aspects to digital economy, and that were even moving even prior to COVID. So some of those parts were already facing challenges, right? Let's say from consumers, workforce, business processes, and things like that. From your experience, like with the COVID and this acceleration of digitalization that you've seen, like which one has experienced the most change? Like where the challenge has become a lot less or the challenge has become a lot more, and on that aspect.
So I can go if you allow me. Usually big moments like the pandemic or changes of regimes or big events, big world events, create a general psychological effect, and people are more willing to change. And I think this pandemic created a big change in the mindset of people, especially in very slow industries like healthcare, for example, to adopt change and to be open for change. And this created
also
the wave.
Forced in a direction a little bit more, isn't it? The most directly.
True. Exactly. But people were generally forced to adopt new methods of trying to do the same thing that they would previously do in meetings in person. For example, they moved online, or adoption of software to make their work more efficient. because there was no ability to put your hands on the paperwork that you needed. This created a big wave, and I think like probably most of the people that are in this call already prepared their surfboards and are already surfing this big wave that was created by the pandemic.
I see. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, definitely. Like, okay, what about like from the consumer aspect? Did you like see a big change in behaviors, big change in any sort of processes that they mindsets and things like that?
I think for the consumers, the main change was that before we were spending a lot of time in front of the computers at work, but then after work, it was usually some sort of relaxation time. And then you go outside, you enjoy time with your family. And then during the pandemic, basically every single moment that we spent living was online. You wake up, you work immediately, because what you usually spend commuting or walking to work, you just immediately wake up and open up your computer, or you immediately go to your phone. So I think that became, our life just became online. Everything from work to socialization, communication, Zoom meetings, all that just became one big mess, I would say, and one big chaos. So a lot of people were not able to distinguish what is work, what is life, where to make that relaxation point, because you suddenly watch Netflix and Zoom meetings on the same computer, and that definitely messed with everyone, and it caused a lot of isolation. It caused a lot of mental well-being issues. So that was one of the issues.
Didn't he, right? In the mental well-being topic. Yeah, definitely. I think that for some reason, like the commute between work and school, somehow for some people also acts as like this bridge, right? And now there's no bridge. Everything is just in one big circle. For sure. What about Tamas, like with all these like acceleration and changes, like from the infrastructure aspects, right? Like, did you like notice anything that really was like a big shift in demand-wise?
Yes. So at first I reflect on Ugne's feedback. So now you don't have the physical barrier between your office or work and personal life. You have to set up your internal barriers. And you do not start working when you wake up immediately. You have to have these processes. So that's also people have to learn to adjust their psychological mindset towards this so connected world. And back to Andre, yes. So surfing, just personal feedback is actually I started to learn surf during the COVID, so just at the end of the COVID. So but that's a physical thing. So that's why I'm an infrastructure guy, so I'm getting always physical. So, but back to we are doing business to business, B2B in merger cases, and there was a huge impact especially in ASEAN countries, so not maybe in Singapore, but in ASEAN countries, that the people like to meet you. So we have been traveling every week, every second week. We have to meet everyone to do business, to get new business, and actually just to conduct the important meetings. So let's say the virtual meetings compared to physical meetings ratio was like 20 to 80, and now it's almost the opposite. So even in countries, in developing countries, emerging countries, we were able to actually shift our workload to virtual, and that is a big support and big boost to the to doing business and actually to conduct work. And that is actually getting things faster, and this is more efficient, and actually it provides a more workload. So in our business, as the population is still very young in these countries, so the digital adoption is even quicker and faster than in other parts of the world. Than anything to have a software for anything that becomes a new normal. And then if you have a problem nowadays, you look for an application to solve it, or solve it through an application. And actually the industry is also driving into this direction. And what is the result of that? It is actually, everything is connected, so it's a hybrid world. So there is very less and less things which are only physical. Of course, surfing is that one, but on the other hand, it's all. But even if you are doing surfing, you do a live streaming maybe with a waterproof camera. You have feedback on your conditions, health data and status. So it's also that kind of things are connected and generating data. And that data, we are happy for that, because the IT computing efficiency is not increasing that fast. So that results in more computing needs. So that's why we see an explode in data center demands in ASEAN countries and also in Singapore. And the reaction for Singapore was that, okay, data center has carbon footprint, so we have to limit that. So now all the other countries, all the other cities are coming up with huge and not linear, but exponential data center capacities to actually supply this kind of tremendous digital adoption. But our dependency on these systems are also becoming more and more. So just see Russia at the moment. So they cut off for many digital services, and actually that can actually happen anywhere, anytime. Because it's controlled by companies, corporations, and then it's controlled by government. So the dependency of all digital aspects, means I realize on the cloud accessibility of the cloud service they use. So that is becoming actually a strategic tool for the 21st century. And now I think the world faces how people should and business should challenge or address that challenge. So that is actually what we see from mindset to global strategy viewpoint also.
I see. Do you also think that, like, in this aspect, like you mentioned something about decentralization, not to the level of blockchain, we're not going to touch on that, but decentralized data so that, like, if one source fails, someone else can still pick it up. Like,
so data residency and all these kind of government initiatives are addressing this topic, that you have to have a physical copy in that location, at least for personal data. I think it's becoming even more and more critical, and the industry is adopting that. So that's why new cloud regions are coming up, popping up in all major countries, and even now smaller countries, to satisfy the global aspect of computing, and also to satisfy the local governmental and strategic and national security requirements also.
I see. I think that makes sense. Okay, just before we continue with our discussion, I'd like to take this chance to quickly do a quick poll. So now that everybody has heard a little bit of what you have to say, if you would like to be connected to ETA systems, Nord Security, or H1 system, please respond on the panel, on the quiz below on your screen. So a quick one. So I'll just go into one more general question before, like, we go a little bit more specific, right? Just now, one thing that you mentioned, I think I was Tamas, you mentioned something about, the population being young, and then hence the digital adoption is a lot quicker. This gives rise to a question that also Singapore sort of faces, because you have an aging population over here. Yes, the digitalization wave is moving, but in terms of inclusivity, in terms of, those who are not as tech savvy, this little bit old, older segments of the population, what do you think can be done, to really make sure that we include everybody in this big wave of digitalization? Anyone? Just... Do you see that issue from your end as well?
So what I think is to have everybody on board for the benefits of digitalization is the application developers is making the user interface simpler and simpler. So that is one, right? Yes. So the front end is becoming sometimes too simple for guys like us. I think we like to modify and just deep dive, but for normal use, that is a benefit, and that helps for anyone to use.
So like the increasing importance of the front-facing, the user interface, the front end of the tech aspect. I see. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we can explore.
And as technology goes, I mean, as fields that are very, very slow to adopt technologies get into the digitalization, then I think the need for this very simple, easy to use interfaces will grow even more. So we've seen this with the products that we've done in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
It's like doctors are not tech savvy, nurses are not tech savvy, patients generally, like young people don't really get sick. Patients are generally not tech savvy because they tend to be a bit older. So you need to design everything to make sure that it's easy to understand, and that the concepts that you put in that interface are understandable and explainable in simple words.
Mm-hmm.
Explain it to your grandma. That's what one of the mantras of user experience design says.
So it's not just a matter of the interface, but also, education in terms of guidance, right? That's the other aspect.
So I think like usually you kind of tend to separate these two. So educating your audience and then having products for the audience are two different initiatives, right? Education is costly. It takes time. It requires attention from that person that you want to educate. And you usually want to like create the interface to match what they have in their head or match their previous experiences.
Right. So it also have to.
Yeah, this was one of the first business advices that I got when I was younger. That if you're building a product and before having the users use it, you need to educate them, then it's not the good product. You're not building the right product. Yeah, I mean it's complicated, right? So educating the audience is complicated, and it's a different, like you need to think about it as a different project.
So with this new challenge in phase, that's even more important. Like, it's really not gonna come at step 1, gotta come at step 0.1, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Just next question I'd like to direct it to Ugne. Since a little bit on the cybersecurity aspect, since we touched on Singapore, we've recently had a lot of cybersecurity coverage in the news lately, because some for our elderly folk, but this is more for general public. Since the pandemic, businesses and remote workers have become more vulnerable, right, in general, because cybersecurity, mostly because everybody is more online, right? So what are some of the biggest threats that we face as either as consumers or even as working remotely, and what can we do about it?
So the majority of the threats were definitely congregated around the beginning of the pandemic. So the beginning of March, April, when quarantine started and everyone just suddenly had to start working from home. A lot of the companies were not ready. They did not have the networks, they did not have software, they did not have hardware to have that remote working. And the same with a lot of the individuals. They did not have computers at home, especially if they have children and they're working in smaller towns like in Lithuania, Central Eastern Europe. They just don't have more devices at home, so they did not have any technical possibilities to do so. And then, of course, everyone was very much confused in chaos. Nobody knew what was happening, what people were supposed to listen to, and hackers took advantage of that, because for hackers it was just basically a golden rush hour. So the email threats increased a lot with a bunch of malware and phishing scams.
I have received a lot more emails, phishing emails since the start.
Yes, especially within the healthcare system. So a lot of the emails were, oh, you can register for COVID vaccine much earlier, or you can get a test much earlier. So those were all fishy, and they were targeting just individuals who did not have more knowledge about what is happening. What Thomas mentioned also about cloud security, more and more businesses just moved on cloud. And if they did not choose just a very trustworthy provider, the cloud storage can be easily attacked, can be easily hacked. And then if something happens to one cloud storage, it can it can just create a domino effect throughout the whole company. And then it's sort of a combination for both consumers and the businesses. There were a lot of insider threats. So people who are working at home, their devices are not protected. Quite often they're using the same device for work and for personal stuff. And then if they download something, torrent or something phishing again, it can just go straight from your computer into the company network, and that can definitely have a lot of financial and reputational loss.
Right.
So to prepare for that and to get rid of, well, to prevent all of this, definitely I am very much a proponent of education and just educating, training your staff, especially if people are working at a company. You need to educate how to use the network. Sometimes you don't have any other choice but to use the tools, the software that you have. I think the same was in Lithuania with education, just in general education industry. Teachers are not very tech savvy and they don't have any other software. So they had to relearn how to use Zoom, how to use just all the digital, I don't know how to say it in English, just all the digital agendas, where to write all the grades. So it was just a huge learning curve. And
the learning curve, yeah, that's what I think that was.
And when everyone expected it to last 2 weeks and then it lasted 1 year, 2 years, no one was ready in healthcare, in education, and as also small businesses, they were not ready for this.
Definitely. What you mentioned, like I think some of the audience members in the audience will probably be able to relate both on work as well as from personal level, you know, like because a lot of the audience probably has families who have kids who are attending home-based learning, HBL. This was a full blast for a good 1-2 years. And also we're working from home, and then that together, you know, trying to figure out the tools and trying to balance your life at the same time. I think that's been quite the challenge, right? Actually, one other thing I wanted to touch on with Tamas about the infrastructure aspect, right? What is the one thing you feel like, you know, since data centers are the foundation of digital economy, and like you said, right, you know, there's this demand that's increasing and all that. Is there something that business owners, you know, doesn't matter Singaporean or a European, like that should know about that, how data centers and stuff that work, so that they can understand a little bit better what to expect, you know, in this new digital economy?
Okay, so at first it's every data is physically present somewhere. So, and that place is a data center. Even if you are using a cloud and you just use one location, it's physically located in one data center, and maybe data is replicated for backup in another location. Of course, you can use multiple locations and pay more, and of course, then you have a real physical redundancy beyond your cloud redundancy. And actually, it has an SLA. So everybody considers that the cloud service is there 100%, but it's not. There is no financial guarantee that that cloud service will be accessible for all the time for the amount of money you are paying. So just at the end, that's why data centers are important. So that's why all the cloud players are setting up multiple geographical data centers to serve a single location to have their internal reliability increase. But how much you actually buy from this package is up to you and your pocket. The other aspect is that what I usually call nowadays is the Hunger Games of data centers, or for power. So because there is actually certain locations in Europe and US, there is actually no more power for data centers. So, you know, somebody wants to set up a 50, 60 megawatt data center, and they say, no, we don't have enough power for that in this location. You have to find a location elsewhere. And that is also happening in this region. However, at the moment, lack of power is not really that much present, but it is getting into that direction. For example, Singapore, because of the carbon footprint, is limiting the build of new data centers also, which is a kind of getting back to the same point that this computing has a physical and carbon footprint and the physical footprint also. So that's how you can understand the whole ecosystem. once I heard from a professor from UK, Ion Blitterin, a very nice presentation 10, 15 years ago. It was said that, okay, have you ever calculated the carbon footprint of streaming one YouTube video? And actually there's a calculator for that. And it was the Gangnam Style video, which streamed 1 billion times a year. And actually the carbon footprint of streaming 1 billion times the Gangnam Style was more than the national consumption of one country in Africa.
Wow.
In that's the National Republic of Congo, maybe. So if you compare to that, okay, what we are doing here, and actually nobody is putting that much effort. So that's why the first guys who made green commitments was the cloud players, because they know their carbon footprint is huge, were huge. So they are driving the market, but still they only represent 20% of the computing industry. So we all say that efficiencies comes with computing, but actually the overall demand for electricity for computing is still increasing. So there is a law, I don't remember the name at the moment, but if you provide, make more available, the people will use even more. So the overall consumption, the overall footprint is not decreasing, even if we think that everything we do digital is economy or sustainable, which is actually not true.
Oh, that's interesting. You know, I never thought that watching Gangnam Style on YouTube is going to be contributing to climate change and, you know, and all that. That's you know, because you just see it on your computer, it's just like, oh, it's right there, but you never really think about the data centers and all the computers that goes into really streaming that onto your phone, right? That's.
I'm not against digitalization really but that's a good thing. It's just that there is actually no KPI in the people's minds that, okay, this is not free. And this is not without carbon footprint. It is. It's like driving a car.
But that's a lot easier to like, you know, visualize, because there's literally like
Yes.
you're moving, you can feel the vibration, there's smoke coming behind, but like, you know, with video is not something that you like just connect to carbon footprint, but that's just super interesting. Yeah, but that's one thing, you know, definitely to keep in mind, right? Like as the demand grows exponentially now, you know, in the past, in the internet age, when we just started, it's just pictures, but now video content is like everywhere. TikTok is
you have video. This kind of phone and the 8K resolution, right? So and you are streaming, so you are not downloading and repeating, streaming every time again and again. That data, which was more than, you know, annual consumption of data a few years ago.
Oh wow! No wonder the demand for data center has like skyrocketed like that, right? Because,
happy for me.
Wow, that's super interesting. That I really like. This is like mind blowing to me right now, actually. Andre, actually, on that, like, can I just want to check with you one other thing? You know, like your company deals a lot with digital experiences, and you know, like watching Gangnam Style over and over again. Not, and maybe a little bit more than that, but like in terms of digital experiences, what can companies like, think about when they want to think like, hey, I want to incorporate digital experiences into my business? Like, what's something that you can start thinking
about? That's the first question that you need to ask yourself. So usually, like, I mean, we focus a lot when we have initial discussions with our customers, and then later on in the collaboration, on making sure that we bring enough value, that what we do, what we develop, what we creates enough value for our customers and their audiences. So we usually aim for at least 5 times the value creation compared to the cost that they have. So if, for example, if you invest $1 in your new digital experience, you need to at least in the beginning, at least the plan needs to be that you have a return on investment of 5 times that investment. Ideally, ideally it can be more, but at least 5, I think it's a good benchmark for
financially or
creating. Yeah, financially. So if you invest, like, I don't know, let's say $1,000 in something digital, then you want to create at least $5,000 as an output, as a value output for you. And that value can be different things. Like it can be awareness, it can be actual dollar value, it can be value in the future. But as the value moves, productivity, efficiency, I think that's the easiest to compute. Like you say, okay, so I'm creating this, I don't know, this system that makes it easier to process orders, for example, and instead of having 10 employees, I will only have 5 employees. Or with my 10 employees, I can process 2 times more orders, right? So you would you would be able to easily calculate how much money you can make with this kind of investment in digitization technology.
Okay, yeah, that definitely makes
down to value and impact, right? And it's like sometimes it's hard to calculate this kind of value, but I usually stress a lot on this. Okay, let's sit down and try to calculate this kind of value, because if there's no value, or if the value is very hard to calculate, or it's very hard to pinpoint, then maybe there is no value there. And the collaboration that starts with nothing really created at the end will not be a good collaboration for any party.
Right. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. You know, like for the 5 times the value that you mentioned, it sort of gives a rule of thumb per se, right? Like for people to start thinking about it. Okay.
Think about it personally, right? So if you buy, let's say, a motorbike, and you, instead of having to go from home to office for 1 hour to commute for 1 hour, with the motorbike you commute in 20 minutes. Now you have 40 minutes, right? And that 40 minutes, if you do something else, you can create new value in that time.
Or even 40 minutes of rest.
Even everybody, when they make a buying decision, they usually have this kind of logic. And I think it should be used, the same logic should be used in business too, when you decide on whether it makes sense or not to digitize something, to transform something with the software, or with if you want to buy a new
for that, like you also really need a bit more understanding on what it can do, what it cannot do, you know. Got to know a little bit. I think that's where webinars like this come in, right? We know what has been done, what can be done, and etc. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Andre. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our panel discussions, and I think it's been very fruitful. We've touched on so many topics and really mind blown for many things, like, oh my God, Gangnam Style and climate change, and from just little things like that, and also cybersecurity, healthcare, you know, just many aspects of it. So thank you so much for such a wonderful discussion, everybody. Oh, just to let everybody know, H1 system, ATA system, as well as Not Security are all part of the Central Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, our members, right? And you can also be a member. Just reach out to us and we'll be able to connect you to the relevant parties to make that happen. So if you feel like you really resonated with the things that we'll be discussing today and like to be around like-minded people, I think that's a good step to take. Well, I think we have slowly come to the end of today's event, but before that, tomorrow we are having another one. It's a little bit more specific on fintech. So you can take a look at this, this QR code and take a scan at it. Just take a while, and you can register for that as well, right? So while you're doing that, I would just like to thank all the participants as well as all the panelists, right? As well as all the speakers, keynote speakers, and the like, for really making this possible. And really, I think everybody, learned something from today, be it from the discussion, be it from the presentations and everything. I think we have a lot of things to take away. I think I'd just like to summarize a few key things that we did manage to take away. One is that, yes, we are talking about technology, but human aspect of technology, right, is something that we cannot forget. Be it from the UI aspect or from managing remote work aspects, things like that. That's one that we cannot expect that the users of technology is still human, right? And two, one of the key challenges that we're really facing in moving forward is not just adoption, but also manpower. I think that's something that everybody, not just in Central Eastern Europe, but also ASEAN is facing, right? And the last one is that, there's a lot more opportunities and a lot more things that is not beyond things that were discussed here today that we can work on once we just come together. So yeah, hope that we can keep this community going, and thank you everybody for attending this webinar. And I hope you've taken away some things, and hope to see you at the next one. Also, for those that were still here, if you'd like to help us improve our experience, you can take a look at the survey, just a very quick one. We would really appreciate it. Thank you.